Five. In five, four, three.
You have the link sent up?
Yeah, it'll pop up for me here in a second.
Yep.
Four, three.
You have the link sent up?
Okay, we're live. Yeah, it'll pop up for me here. I'm going to grab this link, paste it in the chat. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Welcome to Coffee with Ben.
All right, posting up the link
Hello.
for everyone. And we are posted, so we are ready to go. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the second installment of Virtual Coffee with Ben. My name is Ben Blackman. I am the Director of Development for Ridge Royal Innovation Design Group, which is a group of innovation consultants based in St. Petersburg, Florida, although right now we're all based in the virtual world, at least for the foreseeable future. So before we get started, I'd like to encourage everybody who's viewing to subscribe to the Ridge YouTube channel, to like and to share our content. Virtual Coffee with Ben is a YouTube series that focuses on how companies innovate, strategically plan for the future, and align their stakeholders for solid company culture. And we got granted a second episode. So the first one went well enough. We get a second one here. So joining me again today is Michele Royal. She's the founder and chief innovation officer of Ridge. We have Jorn Appel joining us in the back, running the show. He's the director of creativity and innovation for Ridge. And our special guest today is Matt Dieter. Matt is the CEO of Vital Growth Strategies. Thank you all for joining me today. Now, Matt, I'd like to start with you. You are an entrepreneur. You've been involved with many, many growing companies over the years, and it's brought you all the way from California to St. Petersburg. It's actually in St. Pete where you had the opportunity to meet both Michele and I through a program called Leadership St. Pete, which is based out of the Chamber of Commerce for the city of St. Pete. So what was it about the relationship with Michele that got you working together? What has been your focus? Tell us a little bit about that relationship.
I mean, I've known Michele for 10 or 12 years, and we got to know each other really well in Leadership St. Pete. We worked on a seminar together, and I was actually turning around a company in Tampa, and we were looking at having Michele help us with a few things as the company was changing. And so Michele got involved in that, and she wound up facilitating a few sessions for us, and we wound up working together. That's kind of the Reader's Digest version of it, I guess. And when we first started working together, we just kind of worked coaching. What I do is I specialize working with founders. And the first thing I do is get them to focus on what they're doing. So focus on what's vital. And then once we have that squared away, we work on the business. And that's kind of what we did with Michele. And obviously she has huge ambitions. And they were going great until COVID hit. Now, like everybody else, we're having to massively reassess what we're doing and change and adjust. So things were tracking quite well, but I'm sure there's a lot of companies that could say the same thing.
Michele, what was it about Matt that really drew you to him and to Vital Growth Strategies, his partner to work with?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for the great question. And thank you, Matt, for joining us today. Really grateful to have any time with you. So as Matt said, we met roughly 10 years ago. And I think I enjoyed many of his business pursuits because he and his wife founded Women's Running Magazine and the Women's Half Marathon series. And so those were personal accomplishments that I had had in my life whenever I was running half marathons. And it was just from a culture standpoint and a personal development standpoint and achievement standpoint, they had a silent kind of background in my life as far as the things that I was going for. But as Matt said, when we worked together on Leadership St. Pete, we developed a really solid relationship. We supported the seminar. Our company, Ridge, supported the seminar quite extensively. And then when we were working together that summer with the company, I was facilitating the meeting. And I think in business, a lot of times whenever you know people in a community setting or even in a leadership development setting, you get to know all different aspects of their personality. And when I was facilitating the meeting, the part of the personality or the character or the strengths that I saw in Matt had to do with the big question of how this company was going to scale. And as we were exploring a number of different scenarios, I could see the wheels turning in Matt's head, and I could see the way he thinks, because that's what we do. We visualize both strategic thinking and really difficult conversations so that businesses can take critical action. But it was watching his strategic leadership style and his skills at that time that I thought, wow, this is the kind of thinking that I need in my business. I need this kind of direction in my business. And we honestly met for lunch at a local restaurant here. We met for tacos. I would say we share that favorite food. And so we just met for tacos one day. And he asked me a series of questions, and and everything I had hoped happened. I saw my business completely differently. I saw the services and the programs that we offer from a totally different perspective. And almost immediately, my leadership was upskilled from that meeting, and large transformations began to happen because it was almost as if I was given permission to focus on what was most vital for the company. So that lunch turned into another lunch and another coffee, and he guided me through a year of massive growth, which was 2019. And then in November of 2019, started a much more intense relationship where we looked at long-term goals for the company, which are still the same. And it was really about activating the mission into business operations. And so that's how it started. He's a genius. That's how it started.
That's a great story. If you're just joining us, this is Virtual Coffee with Ben. I'm Ben Blackman with Ridge. I'm joined by Michele Royal, the Chief Innovation Officer and founder of Ridge, as well as Matt Dieter, who's the CEO of Vital Growth Strategies. If you like this content, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook page. There'll be plenty of more content like this on its way. Well, Matt, you said everything was going fine until this pandemic. It's something I'm sure we can all relate to. It's really taken the world by storm. As someone who's been entrenched in the business world for a very long time, what's been the most surprising element to you in regards to the pandemic and how companies are dealing with it?
And I think, I've been through a lot. I was working at an investment bank during Black Monday. So I got to see that really up close. Obviously, was running companies during the recession, and my one company, we lost, between 30 and 40% of our revenue, and we recovered and we wound up selling it. But I've never seen anything this drastic, this fast. And I think that's the big difference. 60 days ago, nobody knew what a PPP loan was. And now millions of business people, that's the number one priority in their life, is figuring out how to get to the front of the queue for a PPP loan, especially if they missed the first batch, right? That is the number one thing on everyone's mind if you own a small business. 60 days ago, it didn't even exist. So, that's pretty drastic change. And I think, in our Ridge meetings, we go through it too. Plans are changing week by week. Everything is just, business moves fast, and it's always moves faster and faster and faster. But this is light speed change, that I don't think has ever happened before.
For the both of you, Michele and Matt, both.
And there is no playbook. I think that's
there isn't. Michele and I actually talked about that on our first virtual coffee with Ben. As far as the advice you would give to business leaders, is there any one particular thing that you would say that the business leaders should be doing today to prepare either for their immediate future or for their long-term future?
Go ahead, Michele.
No. You've got an answer queued up. Go.
As Michelle knows, I'm really big on, cash flow, and especially a 13-week cash flow. And which is kind of painful for some people in the beginning to go through and do it. But in normal times, if you can look out 13 weeks, that's basically a quarter. You can handle almost anything that's going to come your way. That's kind of the whole idea behind a 13-week cash flow, where you can adjust, you can change things. The problem is now 13 weeks is the end of July. I don't think anybody can truly say what's going to be happening at the end of July. Is it better? Is it worse? Is it the same? There is really no way to know. So I think the key thing is to just try to conserve your resources, trying to conserve your cash, we call it kind of pausing. You don't want to shut down your business, but you need to find a way to pause it, because the other big thing that people don't take into account is it takes money a lot of times, just like it takes money to launch a business the first time, it takes money to relaunch it, right? You're hiring people, there's probably going to be a gap for a lot of companies between their expenses and when new revenue comes in. If you're a restaurant and you decide, hey, we're going to reopen our restaurant, well, you've got to order food. And I know normally like Cisco and Cheney Brothers have pretty quick terms, but you've got to kind of pay for your food. You got to get your cooks, you got to get your bartenders, you got to get your wait staff, your managers all up. You got and pray that customers come in, and then you get paid. But there's going to be a gap for most companies between spending the money and getting the revenue in, and you've got to figure out a way to account for that. And if you blow all your cash right now, it's going to make starting up even harder. So that's kind of my one big thing with everyone I talk to, is just really trying to manage cash and figuring out what's the next step. We talked the other day, actually yesterday, about Mario Cuomo, that's his dad, Andrew Cuomo. I grew up in New York. I remember Mario Cuomo, actually. But Andrew Cuomo had this slide about reimagine New York. And that was one of the first times I had seen someone thinking beyond a week or two out, thinking beyond the payroll. But he was right. Everyone's going to have to reimagine their companies. No matter what business you're in, there's going to be a certain level of reimagining. How your customers maybe want to have their services delivered is going to change. Who you are might change. And what you're delivering to solve their problems might change. So you've really got to take a look at what business is going to be like when we come out of this. And that's actually, Ridge is great at eating their own dog food, but that's what Ridge does, is they help people manage uncertainty, right? So there's going to be a lot of that in figuring out what the new way of doing business is. And that's, I think, where Ridge really excels.
That's great. Michelle, did you want to chime in as well?
Yeah, I think to that point, the 13-week cash flow is an extremely, I would say, an essential tool. Like right now, there's a lot of talk about essential and non-essential services. The 13-week cash flow would be one of those essential tools. It is the equivalent to a respirator in my world whenever you're talking about COVID treatment and the need for respirators and masks. That's what the 13-week cash flow is an equivalent to. Equally, though, to build on that, when examining a 13-week cash flow and using that as a scenario planning tool of all of the potentials that could happen for a lot of businesses, especially those that have moved online to a complete virtual experience, it's about leveraging that to be able to examine the other operations. For a leader, it's as much about planning those next steps. So this is the information we have. How do we orient ourselves, or how do we get a clear sense, as if we're looking at a map and there's a storm that's happening and you're hiking through treacherous mountains, and now you have to make a decision with your compass, which is another tool, and your map, which is another tool, to be able to look at, okay, these trees fell. We didn't know these trees fell. What's our next path according to this map? So the 13-week cash flow would be your map. And then you need other tools to be able to navigate that. And I think for leaders today, there's the constant, Matt said, on a week by week basis. For us, since our COVID crisis plan was set, March 11th was whenever we set our first plan. we've had daily pivots, and they haven't been huge pivots necessarily. Whenever we look at the scaling of things, it's been daily pivots, which have ended up yielding a whole redirection. So leaders need to be able to navigate that or orient themselves. And if I had one other, then like, so you orient yourselves as a leadership and as a company according to this map, using the tools that you have. It would then be, how do you reassure and inspire? Those two things have to come together. You can't just inspire your people, because that's false hope. You have to be able to reassure them with whatever structures or systems are going to be moving through and funded by that 13-week cash flow awareness. You have to be able to reassure them in that process through whatever zones of certainty or communication that you have. Those would be the other two critical things I would say leaders need to focus on.
All great advice. And I want to broaden it a little bit. We were talking about what you can specifically do within a company, but I'd like to talk about community-wide. And actually, I'd like to bring in Jordan to this as well, to ask the three of you. You've all been entrenched in St. Pete, Tampa community for a while now. Do you see that this community is in position to favorably respond once the economy opens back up? Are there any challenges that you see that are particular to this area?
I think one of the challenges we have in St. Pete is we don't have a huge corporate base like a New York or a Chicago or San Francisco or even a Seattle, where you've got Amazon and you've got Microsoft and you've got all these big companies that have a lot of financial resources that can kind of prime the pump for that local economy. We really don't have that. We have a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. So I think there's a little bit of a challenge there. I think the one advantage that the Tampa Bay market has is that it is a really close community. I mean, I've lived all over the country, and I've never lived anywhere like Tampa Bay, where you're like one or two calls away from pretty much anybody you want to get in touch with. And people are willing to take your calls, and people are willing to help out. And I think that's going to be a big differentiator for our market. Is just, there is a sense of community, there is a sense of kind of pulling together. And I think that's going to help out a lot, because we do have a larger percentage of small and medium-sized businesses relative to some of the bigger cities in the country. And that's going to take some extra effort, I think, bringing all those smaller businesses back online, especially depending on how long this goes. Obviously, the longer it goes, the more difficult it's going to be to get the smaller businesses back online. But I think it is possible. I mean, we've lived here for 20 years and we'll be here for a long time. And there's a reason why, because it's just, I think it's the best place you could live.
Yeah. I've enjoyed it so far.
And Ben, I'll add my observation is that we do have in St. Pete a couple member organizations, not Chamber of Commerce, but like, small local business organizations that are membership based that have rolled out some initiatives to, as a triage, like what can we do to support these businesses from home or remotely? It's food delivery for restaurants that maybe were not set up through DoorDash or whatever, right? There's bookstore owners that are getting on their bicycle and putting together book orders and driving them around with latex gloves on and hand delivering them to the doorsteps. There's coffee roasters who are doing specials on pickup or shipping from the coffee shop. There's all kinds of things that are happening. The challenge is for that to be not too little too late, right? Because what we're finding with everything that's happening is that nobody had a plan in place. And so now a month has gone by and now it's like, oh, well, we can do this, right? But the challenge is it all too little too late? And we're already seeing some businesses close up. So between the two kind of membership organizations, Chamber of Commerce, whoever else is involved in this triage, that is the challenge that is at hand, is for them to put something together that actually connects the business to their supporters and to the community, and not just their tribe, not just their mailing lists that they've taken years to grow and their loyal audience that will follow them and buy whatever, but how do you grow new audience in this, right? Because you're already going to trim that audience down to a percentile of what you had for foot traffic. So how are you getting that new audience? How are you making up for that foot traffic that's not happening? And that's the challenge that they're facing.
Michele, any plans to hand deliver innovation playbooks via bike?
Right. I'd probably be a lot more fit then. No, I will say that, so my career was started out of the recession. So Ridge was essentially founded out of the last recession by working on a large scale European economic development initiative, which was all about creating public-private partnerships, working with small businesses to help them understand their unique intellectual property. In our world, I call it mining. It's about finding, owning, and sharing your value. What is it that you can give in the current state, and that's going to be valuable to those that you can serve, and are there new people that you can serve? So for Tampa Bay as a region, when I returned from the UK and Europe and got embedded in the community, it was those grassroots initiatives and movements that that created a springboard into the larger services and the services that we provide. And that was the startup community that was existent and not quite congealed yet. That was the technology community. That was a whole lot of different groups that were, this was pre-Million Cups, pre-Greenhouse, pre-Tampa Bay Wave, pre-Embark Collective, which is now in Tampa. Essentially, it was the experiment proving ground for all of these different initiatives. And, in working with organizations and communities around the world, NBIA, the International Business Incubator Association, has been a client of ours for the past 6 years. And we've helped them in their reimagining process, because the incubators, i.e. those places where businesses test new ideas and test the potential for their success, our anchor, I would call an anchor persona or an anchor group in a community, becomes even more important now. We had a conversation, Ben, with Hillsborough Community College, and Hillsborough Community College said it is during the downtime that our services become even more valuable, because people are now furloughed, right? We had a 13.5% increase in unemployment claims over the last 4 weeks, 13.5% of individuals who now are looking at, how am I going to support my family? How am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to keep a roof over my head? And now they are looking to the digital economy to be able to start translating the unique skills that they have into the marketplace so that they can make a living. And at the end of the day, it's about the work that needs to be done. A community as tight knit as Tampa Bay, there are other communities. Every community has these resources. Like Jordan said, beyond the chambers are such an important part of it, because they are the links to all of these different organizations where individuals get to find resources on how to start, find resources on how to test. And we also provide those services for active businesses to help them pivot. So everything from the individuals to the businesses at large, it's about looking at what resources, i.e. what skills are out there that are now available to us that we can leverage in all kinds of new ways using the digital economy, but yet keep it very local. At the end of the day, a community is a human. This is something that we knew in our COVID crisis plan. We said, what's going to ultimately stay the same? Humans helping humans is going to stay the same. At the end of the day, it is about community. And every community is banding together to support each other through this process.
Yeah, it's been really wonderful to see. If there is a silver lining through the pandemic, it is how the community has come together, and hopefully we'll hear some great stories in the business world about companies that have fought their way through and come out better on the other side of it. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I really want to thank you all for the time this morning, for all of your valuable insights. Again, I want to encourage everybody to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, share the content, leave us a comment if there is anything that you'd like us to address, any topics, anybody you'd like us to interview. We're open for suggestions. Most importantly, stay safe out there, and we will see you next time. For Michele Royal, Matt Dieter, Jordan Oppold, I'm Ben Blackman with Ridge. This has been Virtual Coffee with Ben. Take care out there. We'll see you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.